Welcome to the Music is My Life podcast from Berklee Online. I'm your host, Pat Healy, and take note of Janet Billig Rich. After following the Replacements around for about 100 tour dates, she began her career in music by selling merch at indie rock shows in the 1980s. Soon she was interning at a label, and then the next thing she knew, she was managing Courtney Love and Hole, Dinosaur Jr., the Lemonheads, the Breeders, and Nirvana. When she soured on management, she took her career to music supervision and was instrumental in all of the rights clearances for the musical Rock of Ages, as well as other Broadway shows, including a Michael Jackson musical slated to open next year. Janet says the twists her career has taken have all been because she just followed her instincts. And her first instinct in music was to see what her sisters were listening to. And then, well, let's let Janet tell you all about it.
I have two older sisters who influenced my musical taste in a way where I just didn't want to like what they liked. And they were sort of really into prog rock, Jethro Tull, Yes, Hot Tuna. And I saw all those bands play live by the time I was like 12, because my sisters would have to drag me along to concerts. I loved Nadia's theme because it was from the Olympics, and the Olympics were like a big deal. And then I remember getting into like Billy Joel. He was from Long Island. I grew up on Long Island. So that was like made a big impact. And then when I was little, I still liked like Sean Cassidy and just things that got fed to you. And then, like, as far as discovery, for me, music discovery came when I was, like, in my late teens, and I, like, discovered the Replacements in the mid-'80s and, like, lost my mind. And that was it for me. 3-chord guitar rock became my jam.
What album was that around?
It was the cassette tape. Sorry, Mom, forgot to pick up trash.
Oh, yeah.
and then, like, honestly, like, Let It Be to me is like the Beatles. Like, and I love the Beatles. I'm not saying that the Beatles aren't important in the pantheon of music. They're the most important, as are the Rolling Stones and all that. But to me, personally, the Replacements were the game changer.
Yeah, it's funny. There might be some people who listen to this podcast and don't get, well, Let It Be was the Beatles, Janet.
They need to do their homework.
I remember hearing that they were going to name the next one, which ended up being Tim, Let It Bleed, which was be awesome.
So brilliant.
What is your favorite Mats song?
Oh my God, that's such a hard question. Okay, so like I would say generally, okay, so I love Androgynous. I think Unsatisfied is probably my favorite song. I think it's like just the most heartbreaking, like tear your guts out. But then I love, like More Cigarettes or like things I quote all the time. I don't know. What's your favorite Matt song?
Probably either Can't Hardly Wait or Nowhere Is My Home, or
I love Can't Hardly Wait live.
That live Maxwell's album that came out a few years ago is just so good.
Yes, agree. Yeah, the horns bother me on the Can't Hardly Wait recording.
It's too sterile.
Yeah, exactly. There was always something about it, but those songs live, Can't Hardly Wait, slayed me live.
So you went on the road and followed them, basically, right?
I did, yeah. I didn't even know there was like a music business. It just didn't even occur to me. I grew up, my mom was a social work and my dad was a teacher. I never knew anybody in entertainment. I had no idea there was a music business. I was in it and making money and earning money before I even knew it existed. So like I was really grew up in a vacuum. When I went and like followed the Replacements, I just wanted to see every live show I could. I learned about them through their music and album releases. There was no Google or anything. It was like trying to figure out even when concerts were. It was, a whole chore. You had to be a real detective. For me, like I found out when they'd play New York and then be like, oh, they're playing Philly and Boston and Washington, D.C. Let's go there. That became the most important thing above school than working.
Did you have some cohorts with you, or were you on solo missions? Or
Oh no, always had like my posse. Like I definitely had a gang going to see shows and traveled the country.
Now, the whole time, you're becoming a ravenous fan. Does it ever occur to you, hey, maybe there's something in it for me here, whether it be the management side or even like, did it occur to you to pick up an instrument and try that out?
No, neither of those things ever occurred to me at all. It just didn't even occur to me that there would be a job. I never even met the replacement. Like,
Throughout all the times?
Yeah, I never met them. I knew their crew. I knew the tour manager and like a couple of the guitar techs. They didn't seem to be like real people that you'd hang out with. It was never like some like, oh, I want to hang out with them. It was just like, I loved their music and I loved seeing them play and knowing their crew. They'd always like get us into the shows for free or, help us with where to go next, as far as like a map or an itinerary. There was like literally no cell phones or Google. I think that's what made me, in the end, a good manager. So I was really crafty.
Was your first foray into the business when you started working merch tables for bands?
Yeah, I think, that was like, oh, look, I could do this and selling t-shirts. And that was a good thing. I think my first like real job was interning, actually an internship at Caroline Records, which at the time was like a distribution company and a small record label. I worked on the record label side and I interned for them and then had a job with them like within probably a month. I ended up working there for a few years. I worked in included like publicity and marketing and I learned a lot about that. That was awesome. I learned so much. And I loved all the bands on the label. It was definitely my taste in music. And I even got the opportunity to sign some bands, which was super cool. And that is how I ended up becoming a manager because I had signed Hole, Courtney Love's band, and they were looking for a manager. And Danny Goldberg and John Silva called me and they were like, why don't you just be the manager? And then they were like, you could come into our company, which was Gold Mountain at the time. You could manage Hole and, whoever else. And that was my first like real management job.
You've gone way too fast though, because I want to dwell on more details of like, I want to know how many replacement shows we're talking about.
I know I saw them a lot.
At least 100 times are we talking?
I think over 100. There's a very cool documentary about the replacements that didn't include the replacements. I wish I could remember what it was called, but it was just
remember. Was it Color Me Impressed, right?
Color Me Impressed. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The guys who made it are great. And I ended up talking to them in that documentary. And I saw a lot of shows. I remember trying to figure out how many shows I saw or over which tours, but it was several different tours.
And then, so the merch selling though, tell me how you made that transition. I mean, was it a matter of wanting to break into the business or was it a matter of...
It was just like, I was there and, well, can you do this? Like, I was just hanging around a lot at rock clubs, and it was like, oh, can you do this? And I did that.
From all your years, what is the piece of ephemera that you're most excited and proud of? Not even replacements, just in general.
Well, I have to say I have a replacement's foam finger that is in my office staring at me right now. So, of course, I have to say that.
So, okay, so you were doing the merchandise, but that was not like a career path. It was just kind of...
No. And then I was going to college. I was at NYU.
When you got the job at Caroline, I'm guessing that's what, like 88, 89 or...
Yeah, I'd have to look. It was Passigallor and White Zombie, Naked Raygun, which was like a hugely popular band from Chicago. And then we had this like New York hardcore thing going on, like Warzone and Youth of Today. Like there were those bands. And then we signed Primus, which was like a strange game changer because they were super popular. And then Smashing Pumpkins, they were signed to Virgin, but Caroline was like a subsidiary of Virgin, owned by the same parent company. So they were like, oh, why don't you put out this Smashing Pumpkins album? And we all loved it. I'm still a massive Smashing Pumpkins fan. I think Billy Corgan's a real treasure, which he'll tell you also. I really do think he is a national treasure. And I got to work with them in the earliest days, which is so cool. And I still have really fond memories of working with them on the Lull EP and the first album, right? It was Gish. It was Gish
Yep.
and Lull were the two albums. Yeah. So that was a wild roller coaster ride.
Yeah,
And
tell me, it's interesting. You mentioned the whole that they were a subsidiary, and I remember, being a kid at that time and reading kind of the music press about the whole subsidiary deal, and a lot of people they were suspicious of it, like, oh, they weren't really on an indie.
yeah, it was really bizarre. Like Caroline really operated separately. Like again, like I wasn't high up on the totem pole. Like I was a publicist. I got to sign some bands doing A&R, but I wasn't like running the place. So I never
Hmm.
dealt with anyone from Virgin. It wasn't like on my paycheck, and it wasn't like you're in a meeting with Virgin Records. Like I didn't even know anybody at Virgin. It was just sort of Keith Wood, who ran the company, who was incredible and gave me so many amazing opportunities to sign bands. Like, I was 20 years old.
Wow.
And he let me do all this cool stuff. But he was the one that dealt with Virgin, and I had no idea. Like it was
Right.
not. It was as indie got, meaning like our budgets were small. We made records for $12,000 and marketed them and did publicity, everything in house. It was like, I don't know, the record label, I think there was like 4 or 5 people. It wasn't like some giant staff.
There was
But
no boardroom meetings where they were talking about the bottom line and corporate's not happy with the bottom line. We got to
not
sell
that
more of
I
this
ever
Lull
knew
EP.
about. That would have been way above my pay grade, but it never trickled down to me.
Right.
It was,
So,
Mark Williams signed them. I know at some point people would give me credit for signing them.
mhm.
I've read that, and that's absolutely not the case. I worked with them very early on doing publicity, and I was a massive fan. But Mark Williams signed them and should get all the credit because he was really saw a lot early.
Now, how important, you talk about being a massive fan, how important is it for you to love the music that of the people you're working with?
Honestly, it's like so hugely important. Like I
Okay.
could see like when I was managing, a lot of successful artists, you'd get pushed like from lawyers who you work with or record companies, like manage this band, can you get involved? People would offer to pay you to like manage a band. People would offer you like a monthly fee. And like honestly, I've never been able, I can't even make a phone call on behalf of someone I'm not psyched about. I just can't do
Right.
it.
So you're at Caroline and you sign whole. How did that whole thing happen? No pun intended.
The way I remember it, and again, like everyone's memories are different, but I remember it was we were about to sign Henry Rollins, which I was driving that and I was super excited. Like I was a massive Black Flag fan. And at the last minute, he bailed and signed to a major. So this was like,
Hmm.
remember you mentioned there was this like indie versus major culture war. So
Right.
this was like at the height of that. All these, punk rock, and I think it started with Sonic Youth signing to Geffen. And then so Henry Rollins like bailed last minute on signing to Caroline and signed to a major. And I was like devastated. I like came into work. I was like shell shocked every single day. I also had this apartment on 7th Street and Avenue C. And whenever bands would come to town that I knew, they'd stay with me because who could afford a hotel in New York City, right? I was friends with Babes in Toyland because having seen the Replacements a lot and following a lot of Minneapolis bands, because of that, and having been to Minneapolis, I'd met a bunch of bands from Minneapolis. I had met Babes in Toyland, and they were on tour, and they came and stayed at my apartment. This was the days before cell phones. So
Yeah.
people would give out my apartment number. That's where they're going to be for a few days when they're in New York. And one night I was literally at home, and Courtney Love called looking for Kat Bielen from Babes in Toyland. Kat wasn't there. Courtney and I ended up talking to each other on the phone. And Courtney's like, "You work at a record label. Let me play you some of my music over the phone," which she
Really?
did. Yeah. They had just put out their first 7-inch with Symphony, the record industry. And I just thought she was amazing. And I was so taken with her as a person on the phone. She had such clarity around what she wanted, and she had vision about like artwork and what she wanted the album to sound like and songs. And she just like be on the phone for hours, and just with this vision, she was so clear about what she wanted and the path to it. And I found her fascinating beyond. So at the same time, the Courtney was calling my apartment. We were becoming phone buddies. The Henry Rollins thing went down. And then we had a hugely successful album with Primus. And then they were going to go sign to Interscope and not deliver the second album to us. And I was like really like broken. I couldn't believe it. Keith Wood, my boss at Caroline, said, like, what are we going to do? You got to get out of your funk. You're so down. I was down about Henry Rollins. I was down about Primus. And I said, well, there's this band in California. I think we should sign them. If we sign them, that would totally take me out of my funk. We can make an album with them. Kim Gordon should be the producer. And we had just made an album with Don Fleming from this band Gumball. So I was like, Kim and Don could work together. They could produce this album for this band in California called Hole. It's like a no-brainer. And that would get me out of my funk. And Keith was like, done and done. Let's sign them.
That's terrific. So during this time, did you know, like, you were fully invested and, it was, a lot of people when they're in their first jobs out of college are definitely not fully invested in them, but it's also not necessarily their dream job that they have. But at this time, did you say, hell yeah, this is my career. I'm going to be in it for the long haul? Or were you, how were you envisioning this?
I still at that point had no idea, like, career or anything. I'm not a big like setting goals and I want to do this like ever. I've just always just sort of followed my instinct. And I didn't even know about like what color is your parachute. Like I had no idea to even, like college to me was like, oh, I should go to college. Like my parents who are educators were always very much like, we insist you get a high school diploma. What you do after that is up to you. And, both my sisters had advanced degrees. Both my parents had advanced degrees. I was just like, yeah, I'll go to college. Like, no, I didn't really have any direction. I graduated high school a year early because I wasn't into it and I wanted to go see the Replacements play. But I didn't drop out of high school. Like I knew a high school diploma was important. So I just went extra one summer and then graduated early, which was like an awesome decision for me.
Yeah.
But I guess after that, when I was at Caroline, I just really enjoyed what I was doing. I like looked forward to going every day. I'd go out every night and see bands, and not necessarily to sign to Caroline. Like I wasn't like that kind of A&R person going out and like scouting music. It was just sort of like I really enjoyed going out. New York at the time had a really vibrant music scene. We all lived in really tiny little dumpy apartments, so it's not like we were going to sit home.
Right. And they were somewhat affordable at that time, right?
Yeah. And, you were just out every night seeing music. That was sort of just like my life was. And I was, I wasn't getting paid a lot at Caroline, but I got a paycheck every week and had health insurance. And, I was like, this is cooking. This is good.
So, okay, you're at Caroline and you sign Hole. And what's next for you there in the chronology? Is that when you jump to Gold Mountain?
Yeah, that was like clearly that album came out pretty on the inside and just was on its own runway, its own trajectory. Nirvana was heating up. And the reason I got involved with Nirvana and all the Sub Pop bands was Caroline had a distribution deal with Sub Pop. So anytime a band would be coming to play in New York for CMJ or New Music Seminar, Caroline would be their home base. So if they had interviews to do or, someone needed to put together a guest list, like that would fall to me. So when like Soundgarden, Mudhoney, would come, Tad, all these bands would come to New York, I was home base and a lot of them would stay with me at my apartment. They'd definitely be around the office at Caroline during the day. So I knew Nirvana the first time they came to New York. They stayed with me. It was early days. It was like before a European tour maybe. And then they came back and stayed with me like a few different times. And then I went to a few shows with them. And I went with them to a Boston show and Amherst, a Hampshire College thing maybe. I can't remember. But they were definitely like a band in my life that became friends with.
Mm-hmm.
So then when Courtney was on Caroline, I think that's when she went to Chicago and she was going to go see the Pumpkins play because they were in Caroline also. And then that's when she met Kurt in Chicago.
Oh, right.
And I think they were dating. And then
that the big juicy gossip in the indie circles was she and Billy Corgan were dating, and then she met Kurt in Chicago, right?
Yeah, there's some, I don't remember the details. I wish I was like gossipy, juicy stuff, but it just literally.
I know. I'm embarrassed that I do remember the details.
I remember like the big moment, like there was Chicago, there was like the Billy Kirk thing, like that was like a thing that happened. And the way, it was Courtney was looking for a manager for Hole. Matter of fact, the way she got to Chicago, and I think this is like part of the ancient lore, was she got a manager who was a prospective manager who she said, well, if you buy me this plane ticket to Chicago, maybe you could be our manager. Mm-hmm. She was real crafty. I learned a lot from her. Sort of that was going on. Gold Mountain was managing Sonic Youth. John Silva was going to manage Nirvana. So it was like all at that same time. John Silva and Danny Goldberg, who were the principals of Gold Mountain at the time, called me and said, why don't you just manage Courtney and Hole and you'll come into Gold Mountain? And I think that was, in hindsight, and I think Danny's told me, since then, like they just wanted some, like Courtney to be with them because they wanted Nirvana to not be distracted with other, with Courtney was such a big presence in their life at that time. So that's why I ended up at Gold Mountain.
With her, I mean, was there this mythos yet about, her personality when did that develop? And did you think that was totally unfair?
No, well, she came in with the myth and the legendary status because she had already been to like England and she had like a relationship with like Julian Cope. She already had, like, she was in movies already. So like Straight to Hell, and she was like had a scene in Sid and Nancy, and like the lore was that she was going to get the role of Nancy. Like it was real. Like she already was like a massive like superstar and had it going on.
And so this whole time, you're traveling around with Nirvana and these small gigs. Did you feel the spark of possibility with all the people in these circles, or was it just your peers and people that were your age and shared common interests?
I think it was both. Yeah, I mean, I think it was shared common interests, and that I was a real fan of what they were doing.
And when you were asked to manage, I mean, how did you learn the ropes of how to do that from working at a label to being the one go-to person or the main go-to person for performers?
That's a great question. No one ever told me how to be a manager. There's not a book. It's just, I think it's all on instinct. And, I just always like, pretend you know what you're doing and you'll figure it out. Like, I don't know. Because even at Gold Mountain, it's not like John or Danny was ever like, this is what you should do. It was just like, I was managing bands. Like, so I started managing with Hole, and then Danny somehow had a relationship with Evan Dando and the Lemonheads. And I had known Evan from being in Boston a lot. So it was like, oh, you should manage Evan. He needs a manager. And I was like, great. I love the Lemonheads. I've seen him 100 times. I knew Evan because I knew his old managers, Tom Johnson and Joyce Linehan. But so I knew Evan and I knew the Lemonheads and I knew Joyce and Tommy. And I was like, yeah, I'll totally manage Evan. So that's how I ended up getting involved with them. And then a friend introduced me to Kim Deal, who had come into my office for a meeting. I had been in my office for probably 2 weeks. I'd been a manager all of 2 weeks. And Kim came in and said, I heard on the radio that the Pixies are broken up. And she had done a Breeders album before. And she's like, so I think Breeders are my full-time gig. So, if you're available, you should be our manager. We're going to be full-time.
But so she walks in and says, I mean, what was the legend that they broke up by fax or whatever? And
I think she heard on the radio. I don't know what the legend is. Again, this is like my memory. Kim might have a different memory, but my memory is she had heard on the radio. Charles had announced it on some radio station in Ireland or England. And so she was like, yeah, I'm going to do a Breeders album. And I was like, great, I'll be your manager. I was never the biggest Pixies fan, but I certainly was a Kim Deal fan. Dinosaur Jr. needed a manager.
So those were your three in that order. It became Hole, and then Lemonheads, then Breeders, then Dinosaur Jr.
And Dinosaur Jr. And then
Wow.
a band called Walt Mink, who should have been as big as any of those. They still have a legend around them. But yeah, and Walt Mink. I think that was it.
As you were, I'm guessing your confidence was growing and you didn't have to pretend like you knew what you were doing at that point. But what were
Well, I disagree with that because I think you're constantly having to pretend you know what you're doing because, no matter how many record deals you make, publishing deals, licenses, every single one's different. So you're constantly having to refigure out, relearn, what does this mean? So,
well, I guess what at that time that Kim Deal walks into your office, I mean, what is your pitch of here's what I can offer you?
I don't know. I was never much of a pitcher. And I think anytime I had to pitch a band, and it was just always more casual, yeah, we should do this. This is what my commission rate is. And let's do it, And I never had big contracts. And, we had management agreements that laid out what the commission structure was. And I always tell young people, have your stuff tidy. So your best friend today, your worst enemy tomorrow. Have your deals done. Make sure your contracts are signed and all that stuff, and everyone's clear about what money you're making, the difference between net and gross. Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm a quick study. I learn fast, and I just sort of would take experiences and learn from them and keep going.
Well, it's interesting too, those first three acts, the Breeders, the Lemonheads, and Hole, they kind of have a reputation for narcotic intake. And did that ever become any sort of problem, or did they would they turn to you for help with that sort of thing, or?
No, I never even knew anyone was on drugs. Honestly, I was so at arm's length from it. No one ever offered me any. I had never had experience with it. So I didn't know the signs of drug use. I had no idea any of them were on drugs. I literally just didn't know. Because I wasn't I was hanging out, It's I was really busy, So if I was on the road with a band, after they played, I was back to the hotel, doing work, sending faxes, or, making phone calls. I was the first one up, having meetings.
So you were taking it really, really seriously at this time. It was a different lifestyle than the bands crashing at your tiny New York place by this point.
Oh, yeah, millions of dollars were at stake. People's schedules. I was managing human beings, managing tours with, 4 and 5 buses and 10 trucks and lighting rigs. And, I had a lot of people to manage. These were all little economies. It wasn't oh, this is my buddy's punk rock band. It was this is real shit. This is real money. And I had a real sense of that. So I just wasn't involved in that side of it.
Right. So, but I'd imagine since it was something that was in public that there were reports about it in the press and stuff. Was that concerning to you at the time?
Yeah. And again, so much of it was after the fact, and it wasn't social media and things are today. It wasn't this is happening right now, blah,
So, okay, you're at Gold Mountain, and then you go to Atlantic after that, or were you still doing?
Yeah, I got an opportunity to go to Atlantic. I can't remember what year it was, early 90s, 93, 94.
Mm-hmm.
And I had several job offers during this time. I think everyone wanted someone who knows Nirvana, as they were blowing up. And I was someone so I had rejected a lot of job offers. And then finally, the Atlantic job offer, I was all right, fine. And it was from Danny Goldberg, who at the time was at Atlantic. And then by the time I said yes and got there, he was gone. So it was just I wasn't there for very long. It was a very strange time.
Yeah.
I knew the first few weeks I didn't fit in. What was funny was, I think I'm probably the only person in history is the way the deal was structured. They give me a signing bonus of a lot of money and then a big annual salary. And I went in and I was this isn't working out. I'm not interested in being here. It's just not for me. I'm going to give you back the signing bonus. And
Wow.
I wrote them a giant check. And I remember it didn't get cashed for a long time. And I like called, I was like, oh, the check hasn't cleared my account. And they were like, oh, you know what? They didn't even have a mechanism to deposit the check back.
Wow.
But they did, finally. They figured it out.
Yeah. So what you're talking about, millions of dollars at stake sort of thing. And that's, I guess I'd like to know about the moment where you kind of came to terms with that, where it had transitioned from just hanging out with friends, going to see shows and living in my tiny apartment to this is a big, big responsibility.
I'm not that self-aware, so I don't know when that was. It's just like maybe when I got a business manager, I was really bad at taking care of money for myself because I was very busy with other people. And I got a very close friend of mine at the time was a business manager that handled a lot of my clients. And so I was like, had to hire a business manager. So maybe that personally for me was like, oh, I need help with this. So maybe that, but that's only in retrospect. There was never a moment in time where I was like, now I'm successful or now I'm in the music business. Like it just happened so gradually.
As a manager, were you having to deal with, we talk about personalities. Were there moments of crises that you were yearning to get away from at all?
Oh, like when I left management to go to Atlantic?
Yeah, I'd imagine that the management lifestyle would be pretty stressful.
Yeah, no, it's pretty brutal for sure. And I'm sure that had something to do with why I took the job at Atlantic. Like things were just really heavy after Kurt died. And I think it was just heavy. And it was just like, well, this is a change. I'll do this. And then after a year at Atlantic, or not even, I wasn't even there a full year. I was like, this is not for me. I just want to be a manager and I just want to manage on my own. Like I didn't want to like go back to Gold Mountain. I just wanted to have my own company and manage bands I wanted to manage. And that was it. And so that's when I started my current company 25 years ago, which is Manage This Media, or it actually was just called Manage This. And that, like, I ended up working with like Lisa Loeb, who I still work with, my favorite, the greatest.
Right.
Guided by Voices, John Spencer Blues Explosion, Chivo Mato. Like, so I just sort of built a roster that sort of spoke to me that I loved and brought in people to work with me who are just, just my people. And it was a pretty awesome company.
It's terrific. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you is just because your life in music it's been so long, and then there are so many new beginnings that branch off at unexpected places. Like, how did you get into music supervision and become a music rights consultant?
It is
20
strange.
years into your career.
I know, it is strange. And that I do have an answer for, which is, so I was managing all these bands and I was traveling a lot, and I ended up meeting someone. I got married. I got pregnant with twins,
right?
Which was a surprise. There were no twins in my family. We'd only been married a little bit. Like, it was like, what? So I'm like, you know what? No sweat. I'll rock this. Like, just like, whatever, this will be fine. When my twins were about a year old, I realized, like, you can't do it all. Like, I wanted to be around. I didn't want to be traveling so much. And I was traveling a lot, gone like 200 nights when my kids were a year old, by the time my kids turned a year. And I was like, this isn't good for anybody at the time. And my 1-year-olds are like more mature and independent than any of my clients. And that was like, for me, a real line in the sand. And I started working with Courtney again, Kim Deal. I had a lot of my same old clients from Gold Mountain. So I was working with Courtney, Kim Deal, Guided by Voices, Lisa Lowe, Evan, I think I was working with again at the time, Chivo Mato. Like, I had an incredible roster, but I was just like, oh my God, this is like not working. And basically I dropped all my clients and just said, like, F it. I'm just going to do whatever comes my way.
Well, it's funny because that you say that about your 1-year-old twins were more independent than some of your clients. I think on Wikipedia, it's like on 19th March 2004, Billig Rich was featured on the cover of the New York Post while bailing Courtney Love out of jail.
That's like right about the time when my kids were turning 1. And I think I just couldn't handle it. Like, I just was like, And I was also like, I'm the mom. Like, I have an incredible husband and partner, and he really does everything. Like, I don't know how to cook. You know, he could do all the family lady thing or whatever it's supposed to be, like the division of labor between like a man and a woman. Like, it's not that at all. Like, your DNA as a mom, like you grew these kids in your belly. Like, I want to go to the dentist appointment. I want to go to the preschool thing. You know, like you just
Yeah.
want to go and be there. And, you know, the being a manager is like just not conducive to it for me. I'm sure for other people, they can rock it out. I couldn't. I was like, I can't do this. You like for
Mm-hmm.
me, I had that like I can't do it all moment. So I basically dropped all my clients. It was like, I'm going to do something else. And I made a handful of calls and called just various people I knew and said, like, I'm basically for hire. I could do whatever. I'm a quick study. One of the first people to call me back was someone who I still work with. His name is Stephen Cantor, and he's an incredible filmmaker. And he called me and he said, I just had my pilot go to a series greenlit at HBO, and I'm going to put you in as the music supervisor. And I was like, awesome. Great. I'll do that. So I called HBO and I spoke to a man named Michael Hallaton, who I just recently learned passed away, which I'm so sad. He really gave me such a shot. And I said, you know, I'm the music supervisor on this new series. I haven't been a music supervisor before, but I've done bucket loads of licensing deals. I understand publishing, rights holders, masters in an incredibly deep way because I'd made so many record deals and I've licensed so much music. You know, all the clients I had, you know, did licenses for television and films and over the years. So I really had a big understanding of it. And Steven, who hired me, knew exactly what music he wanted. I wasn't a music supervisor in the sense that like, you should put this song in this scene. It wasn't that at all. Steven knew what he wanted. I just was like a facilitator. Michael at HBO was like, no problem. Here's all templates. I'll show you exactly what to do. And he just basically like taught me how to be a clearance person. I did that series, and then HBO hired me to do, I don't know, I think I did 4 or 5 documentaries for them that year. And all of a sudden I had a clearance business. And then shortly after that, Matt Weaver called me with the idea for a musical that he wanted to do with music. And I learned how to clear music for theater. And that brought me to Rock of Ages, which was like an amazing moment in my career because it was just as exciting as other huge moments.
Yeah, but a little bit safer, right?
Oh my God. And what's so exciting about being a producer in theater, and I shared this with some of my old management colleagues, was that like, if you have a client that doesn't want to get on stage or is having a fit or tantrum about something, and you're the manager, you're screwed. You're not going to get the band's not going on stage. No one's getting paid. Like everyone, you know, it upends the entire thing. In theater, if someone doesn't want to get on stage, there's an understudy. Like no one has tantrums. Everyone's an adult. They're all incredibly happy to be there. They all know how lucky they are.
Tell me a little bit about the upcoming Michael Jackson musical. What's the word on that?
Well, hopefully there'll be musicals again, but it's going to open in 2021, and I'd look into like, you know, 3 days in Michael Jackson's life, and I've only seen a workshop of it, and I was blown away. I mean, first of all, the catalog of music, whatever your emotional investment is with Michael Jackson, like, you know, wherever you land on the scope of like the documentary and all that stuff, like, whatever your opinion is, his scope of music and what he gave to the world is so monumental. I mean, it's just beyond, and hearing all those songs, like there's just no way not to have your ass kicked with it. Like you're just like, oh my God. So I'm super excited for the world to see that. And like the greatest dancing, and the arrangements are incredible. It's going to be a real spectacular.
You said, you know, when you did your first film that it was kind of just doing rights clearance and stuff. But, you know, watching that Steve Aoki documentary the other night, that I'll Sleep When I'm Dead.
Oh yeah, that's such a really good movie.
Yeah, but so you were the music supervisor for that, and the music in that was so adventurous because it's like, I don't think he had anything to do with the kills, you know, but there they are in like a perfect perfect
Yeah.
synchronization.
Well, I have to backtrack because, first of all, that movie, the director, Justin Crook, picked every single song.
Oh, he did? Okay.
Incredible. I mean, he's got such an amazing, and a matter of fact, it's funny, after the first time I screened the movie, I was like, you are going to make me look so good. He'll be excited to know that you enjoyed the music. And I'm working on another movie with him right now about Travis Barker. I don't know how I get so lucky to work with so many talented people. A lot of times when I talk to students or give advice to people, I always say, play spot the genius. Literally have talented friends. Make sure your friends are more creative than you or more talented than you, because all boats rise with the tide. If one friend does well, all the other friends come along and do well.
Well, playing spot the genius is some advice that's genius. Hey, because you are a genius, you listened all the way through to the end of this episode. And to thank you for that, we here at the Music Is My Life podcast would like to give you a $100 discount on a Berklee Online course. All you got to do, head over to musicismylifepod.com right now and redeem this special offer. That's it. You'll also get a link to all sorts of free resources, so check it out, musicismylifepod.com. This episode was edited by Talia Smith, mastered by Jose David Vindismora, all visual assets coordinated by Mike DeBenedictis, social media by Brooke Larson, web assistance courtesy of Mark Thomas, Steve Zimmerman, Joe McDonough, and Chris Keene. I wrote and recorded the Music Is My Life theme song, but the expert remixing comes courtesy of Lily Dickinson. Special thanks to Gabriel Reifer-Cohen, Janet Billig, and thanks to you for listening. Take note to join us on the final episode of the season. Don't worry, we'll return in September. Anyway, that's on July 6th, and our guest will be... You know what? I want to make it a surprise. You have listened all the way through, so I'll give you a hint. Let's just say it'll be like a heat wave. All right, that's all I'm saying. Stay safe, everybody. We'll talk soon.